So let's get the party started. Last class, we looked at 3 different biological systems that they're constantly interacting, and these more or less, like the conflicts between them, is really the battleground of morality and free choice. The three systems were the brain and the nervous system. And one thing I left out, which is really a cool idea, I was always troubled by this idea, why the body should get a chelik and olam haba. Everyone except the Rambam says that happens. For the Rambam, because he's very much, pro-intellect, spirituality equals intellect, it becomes very difficult, like, why do you need a body in the afterlife for him? And so his Techiyas Mesim is kind of weird because he kind of looks at it like, okay, you go through life, you die, Techiyas Mesim happens, so you get like a round 2, but then you die again, and your neshama gets to hang out with God, and that's the way you live for eternity. Everyone else more or less says, no, like when you have Techiyas Mesim, you're alive and you stay alive in this, highly spiritualized sort of way. So I don't know, I was kind of bothered with, well, why would that, like, I gravitated towards the Rambam a lot, like brass tacks, like, well, what justifies the body getting a Techiyas Mesim? So something really cool is that our entire experience of our world is really first modeled and graphed onto our entire nervous system. What this means practically is, like, let's say that you went blind, God forbid. And, most people aren't 100% blind. Like, people can still see, light. But for, we're going to say you're 100% blind, and I were to show you a shocking picture, and I were to ask you, well, what's on the picture? Of course, you'd say, stupid question, Rabbi, I can't see. But if I hooked your body up with different, measuring how much you're sweating and heart rate, your body would respond to the shocking image. You just can't see it. Your body sees it. Your body sees it.
Wait, that's possible?
Yeah. Or someone who became paralyzed later in life, if you were to, get them on a crane and lower them onto a treadmill, so they can't walk, but what would end up happening is their legs would start doing the motion of walking, that their legs know how to walk. You don't need a brain for that.
How is the body thing possible with the picture? How could it feel like the picture doesn't touch them or anything?
Your entire nervous system, your entire body is designed to reflect reality. So it becomes really cool, like, how much of you is your body and how much of you ain't your body. That's not clear cut. So a cool thought that kind of getting things a little more complicated. So maybe it is justified your body gets a Techiyas Mesim. It experiences the world before you realize you're experiencing the world. And it's responding to the world before you're consciously aware. This is also why babies usually don't fall off ledges. They just have it built in just not to do that. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Always so worried about babies falling off.
I don't know. I wasn't worried. So that was system number 1. That was system number 1. And that I kind of labeled as left right hemisphere, predator system, prey system, order system, chaos system, and that we engage the world in a paradox this way. And you missed all of this, so none of this will make sense.
I also missed that.
Yeah.
Do you have number class?
What I'm going to do is for the test, which we also talked about that you missed.
Test?
Oh yeah, ask everybody. It's not a crazy test. It's more creative, and I'm going to put my sheets up so you can kind of see and bring it back here. So that's system number 1. System number 2 was this more moral system, the Yetzer Hara, the Yetzer Tov. I conceptualize the Yetzer Hara as selfishness. It's survival. Both are really survival skill based. That's what you're doing. But one is more selfish and one is more selfless. I argue that the Yetzer Tov has pretty good press, but is not so accurate, that one's selflessness oftentimes creates its own problems. In fact, in our morning brachas that we daven, we make specific mention that we don't want our Yetzer to get ahead of itself. That when we are too selfless, when we're too giving, oftentimes what we end up doing is we fragilize people and we deny them the ability to handle their own problems and grow from them. So it's actually very harmful to help people. Not all the time. I don't want to be like, let them suffer. That's not what I'm arguing. It's not what I'm saying. We're not letting people suffer, but it's a thing you have to at least think about is, am I fragilizing this person am I stealing an opportunity for them to grow? That's a serious question. And then the last system was cognition. And there I spelled out the paradox that exists there is between one having the ability to properly assess and use his intelligence to make his way through the world, and the other is rationalizing. That most of the reasons we give in life are really just rationalizations, though we don't look stupid. Because if we were really like being honest with ourselves, if we were really going to give the real reason why we did something is, why did you just hit that guy? Well, the real reason is when my left hemisphere compelled me to do it. That sounds dumb. As opposed to if you give a reason like, well, he's being an idiot. Society will accept
Being an idiot.
being an idiot and sometimes warrants getting a whack. Don't hit people.
Okay. Oh, my left hemisphere is telling me to.
You might left. Yeah, right. That would be yeah. There was a comedian way back. He would I forget the guy's name, but he had this line, "The devil made me do it." It's kind of like that. Look him up. The devil made me do it. You can look him up. He was a famous comedian way back when.
I bet you would win a court case for that.
Okay. So more or less what we've
Is obviously trying to give you the
more or less what we've covered up until now is an outline of the meta halacha of bein adam la'atzmo, how you relate to yourself. That was last week's class and the week before last. We're going to move into some new territory of bein adam lechavero, how one orients himself to other people. It's a pasuk in Devarim, 2 psukim. Shemor tishmarun es mitzvos Adonai Elohechem ve'edosav v'huchav asher tzivach. That you should superguard, Shemor tishmarun, be a girder of the mitzvahs that God gave and all of his symbolic mitzvahs. Like edus is kind of like a mitzvahs that are more philosophically based, let's say, and chukim which have no rational meaning. So do those. That basically covers all mitzvahs. The first pasuk says do mitzvahs. Great, got it. Vasis hayashar v'tov be'enei Adonai laman yetav lach uva'asa v'yirashta es haaretz hatova asher nishba Adonai labasecha, and do good. Be straight and good in the eyes of God so that you can lead a good life and inherit the land. So the Ramban on this pasuk says, well, wait a second, if the first pasuk, that basically covered all of the mitzvahs, right? Like, said do them all, So what's this pasuk adding? And the Ramban takes from this pasuk as the source for this meta idea of bein adam lechavero, because he basically boils down, he says like this: living with people is complicated to say the least. There's many levels of relationship that you have to deal with. You got we sorted out yourself in the last couple classes, and that was complex enough. But now you got to deal with your family. You got to deal with your friends. You got to deal with your community, your businesses that you might be running. How you do business, just being a basic citizen to the country you live in, and being a nice guy in your neighborhood. So the Ramban point blank says it's impossible for the Torah to outline all those mitzvahs. It's impossible to make a list. We got the 613, that's fair enough, but it would just be an infinite amount of mitzvahs working out that ball of wax, how you should relate to other people. So basically what this pasuk presents are two different worlds you have to be standing in order to properly do the mitzvahs of bein adam lechavero. One, hatov, is in the eyes of God. You always have to consider what God might think about what you're doing. And hayashar, that idea reflects, you have to be yashar in the eyes of man. And you have to do both simultaneously. And if you're able to navigate that, you're doing good in the world of bein adam lechavero.
What was it? Hatov and...
Hatov means in the eyes of God, and being yashar means in the eyes of man. It's in Devarim Vav Yud Ches. This is the full pasuk. So it turns out, how you treat people it's not just a divine mandate. It demands that there's a human component as well, simultaneously present. It gets kind of hairy, the things that I've experienced, the way that people relate to being religious, because I think a lot of times the first part is overemphasized when it comes to Bein Chavero. God says treat people good. So it's a commandment, and you go out, you're going to be a good soldier, and you're going to do it. And people forget, in order to relate to other human beings, you have to not be a robot. You have to actually be a human being. There was a story about one of the modern day Gedolim, Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He was sick, and he was getting a lot of visitors, and he started turning people away, but he was kind of objecting. He was basically made the rule, listen, if you're making me your mitzvah, I don't want to see you. If you're coming because you're actually worried about my health, by all means, it's nice to see you. But don't make me your mitzvah. Don't make me some object to be used in order to get a better place in heaven. I ran across another example of this. It was nice lectures on Sukkos. And the speaker, it just really caught me off guard. He was tying in Sukkos to how you treat people. And the way he put it was you need to treat people like you would treat your esrog. And that's your reference point? Is the esrog, we're so worried about an esrog, that's the thing that's not ambiguous? That's the thing that makes sense? But it's more of a weird piece of information that maybe you need to treat people nicely? Again, this overemphasis on Bein Adam Lechavero as a commandment from God, and not enough of Yashrus. Being a person who feels. I even at one point had a whole debate with whether or not you can fulfill the mitzvah of Avos Reim, loving another person. Do you need to feel anything to fulfill that mitzvah?
To love another person?
Yeah.
Love them.
No.
Yeah. Do you need to feel a feeling or not?
Yeah.
Well, I was very much arguing you do, because love's a feeling. I was just being simple position, if you're supposed to love somebody, there is a feeling there. Now, to be fair, there are some Rishonim that would argue your point that it's more important the behavior, and you can be legitimate. It can be legitimate that you can say you were Makayim the mitzvah of Avos Reim by visiting the sick, giving tzedakah, whatever it is, no matter what your intention is. You could, even by accident, there's a shita in the poskim that if you drop money and some poor soul picks it up and, he was really poor, he really needs it, that you get the mitzvah of Avos Reim. So there is such a shita. There's what to say about behaviors being more important than feelings. But I was making the pushback, and it does turn out that, if you want to be Makayim this mitzvah, to the fullest extent according to all positions, you have to do both. Do something nice and actually feel something nice.
Even if you force yourself to?
What do you mean by that?
Maybe if you want to forgive someone, and you want to, you take the first step of saying sorry, hoping they'll feel it full, and you do forgive them, but you don't feel it wholeheartedly. Does that take away, do you not get the mitzvah if you forgive someone who really wronged you, and you forgave them, but you don't feel it 100% sometimes? Does that make sense?
Well, I know. It might not be forbidden not to forgive somebody. There are certain situations you shouldn't forgive people.
Like what?
Kind of depends.
What would be a situation that you don't have to forgive a person?
If they horribly ruin you.
In what sense?
In a social sense, they just totally whatever they did to you was so horrible that it was you just couldn't survive in society. You lost your job. They ran you out of town. Those things.
What if they made you go to start? What if you have to start therapy because of it? You feel you need to go.
What I would say this, because I don't know if the most important thing about forgiving someone is for the other person. I think the most important thing about forgiveness is for yourself, that you're able to unburden yourself of hate. Like, hate is toxic. I mean, I think that there's a strong argument to make that forgiving someone is more bein adam la'atzmo. You owe it to yourself to forgive people.
What happens if you don't necessarily hate the person, you just don't want to forgive the action that they did? Like, you've moved on, but like, you're just...
It was wrong, you didn't like it, and it hurt you, and fair enough.
I guess it's okay to still feel that hurt, right?
I mean, it's complicated. I mean, these sorts of questions are complicated
Like,
because...
also, they never apologize and they never feel sorry.
I mean, the in halacha, the midas chasidus, like the ideal to try and strive for is forgiving people who've never even knew that they harmed you. That's the extent of how forgiving you should be. But like the word "should" there is with asterisks. That's a tall orders, and it's something you work towards. That's more of a life philosophy. It's less he did this, I did that, she said this. That's very local. You know, that's very limited. When you're talking about that level of forgiveness, it's not so much about what happened on Tuesday, but that's more of like, how do you want to lead your life? It's a life question. And it is something to strive for. So I'm definitely not encouraging people not to be forgiving. But what I am saying is forgiveness is not so simple. You have to be honest with yourself about that. And also know, but maybe you deserve to forgive somebody. Like I said, at the very least, like unburden yourself with the toxicity of hate. I mean, that just ruins people. Like really, that takes years off your life hating people. You know, that's one thing that surprises couples when they come into therapy. Like they figure, usually couples like will suffer for a good 10 years before they go to therapy. And I mean suffer. It's not like, oh, they had some problems. And it's always just a train wreck when they come in around that time anyway, because whatever pain that they were going through, like just multiplied by, every month. And they're surprised to learn, like, yeah, I mean, we have to turn this around, not just because you want to keep your marriage, but we don't want you to get sick and die. It ruins your immune system, hate. It just ruins it. So it's like, maybe being forgiving is a good idea just for you. Okay.
What about if you forgive someone but you haven't ever told them you forgive them? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's a different question of, well, okay, you've forgiven them, but would it add anything in the world to tell them? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, like if you speak Lashon Hara about somebody, let's say, usually it's more painful to hear, oh my gosh, you were saying that behind my back?
Yeah.
As opposed to, that's why Rabbi Yonasan did not give his haskama to the Chofetz Chaim's book on Lashon Hara. He said, no way. Because in your book, you say that it's a chiyuv that you have to tell the person who knew nothing about the Lashon Hara. If no, you're just going to hurt him more. I'm not going to sign on to your book. It was all in that one halacha. Rabbi Yonasan wouldn't. He praised the book. It's a good book. You should all read it. I'm not trying to denigrate the work, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's like, what are you trying to achieve? Should always be like the first question you ask in anything.
No, it's you.
So it comes out. So it comes out for our purposes, the idea of Tov and Yashrus are two types of knowledge, let's say. That being good in the eyes of Hashem, the way the Malbim looks at it, is received knowledge, revelation. Whereas Yashrus is something inborn, instinctual. It's Rav Hirsch. I love the way Rav Hirsch. He's not the only one who puts it this way, but Rav Hirsch, in his customary poetic style, puts it to you like this: that there's really two types of revelation in the world. One is Har Sinai, and the other is in your human heart constantly. Good. So today I'm going to focus more on the Har Sinai stuff. What it being good in the eyes of God when it comes to Ben Adam Lechavero. And there's really two types. There's two types of received knowledge. One is chok.
Hope.
Chok.
Oh.
Wait, this is the two different types of knowledge that we're
So there's two types. I'm saying there's two different types of knowledge.
Yeah, but this is like from.
And this is the
branch
this is
of
received
the-
knowledge.
Okay.
Knowledge. Being good in the eyes of Hashem. Next week we're gonna deal with Yashrus of being straight when it comes to other people. That more instinctual sort of knowledge, the inner revelation of the human heart.
So like Chok and the other one that we didn't discuss yet are going to be the two branches of the knowledge given from Hashem kind of thing.
So hold on. So
Receiving knowledge is a chok.
yeah. Let me backtrack. Let me map this out a little more effectively. So there's two types of knowledge based on the Malbim, and being good in the eyes of Hashem, this tov in the eyes of Hashem, that's received knowledge. That's Har Sinai stuff. And there's two types of that. There's chok, and there's things that you would need to live longer than your lifespan to know. These are two different types of revelation when it comes to God. We're going to deal with the revelation of the human heart later. We're going to deal with that next week.
You said chok and things you could only know
If you lived a super long time. So chok is a little harder to define, but basically what a chok is it's Rav Hersh kind of describes it as almost like this inherent spiritual essence. It's not explainable. It's not something that human logic can have derived all on its own. And these are things like halachas like shatnez, or halachas like all the halachas of what you can and can't eat. I mean, there's no rational explanation for those things. Those are a chok. And Rashi, Gemara Brachos, gives a reason. Well, why would God ever put in things that don't make sense? That's basically the bottom line of a chok. It doesn't make sense. Why do we have it? So the way he almost looks at it is like Torah is almost too perfect. Torah makes a lot of sense, says Rashi. It makes a lot of rational sense, and and a lot of how the halachic process is organized gives a lot of power to people. You learn. You keep learning, eventually become a rabbi, you got a lot of books under your belt. Eventually you can start posketing halachas, and way back when in the times of the Gemara, they were creating halachas. They were arguing. I mean, it was great. It was a good old time. Make halachas all over the place. And there's a certain sort of smell of like, well, who's doing it? Is this God doing it? Is this people doing it? And well, it all makes sense and it's all reasonable, and there's a certain gaiva that you have to watch out for in the halachic process, because God does give a lot of power in our hands. It's demanded given the fact that we have free will. It's by default we have to have a lot of power. Well, a lot is riding on what we do. We have free will. So what a chok is, says Rashi, is almost like a reminder that God throws in things that make absolutely no sense, just to remind you, halacha is not created by you. There's some God stuff going on. Don't forget that. So it's a reminder. And every halacha, no matter how reasonable, when you start really pounding the particulars of the halacha, the most reasonable, most logic-based halachas, you're going to find a chok or two. They're always kind of hidden there, like little snipers to remind you. So that's a chok. That's a chok. Serving as a reminder that, sure, we have a lot of power in the halachic process, but wait a second, this is a God thing. Don't forget. You're not exactly the one in charge. That's what a chok, that's what its function is. The second aspect of received knowledge from Hashem are the things that you would need to live longer than a lifetime to figure out. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's how you play the game. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's how you play the game. What does that mean?
It's the work you put in, not the results. Type. Like playing the game smart.
Like, doesn't it matter if you just win? Like, isn't that what a game's all about? Win. Like, that's what a game's designed to do. It's like, why? I'm not arguing it's not true. Like, we all, when we hear that phrase, it doesn't matter if you win or lose how you play the game. Like, we all intuitively know it's true. Like, what is it teaching?
That Hashem, you're always a winner.
It doesn't matter how long you stay alive and whether you see the end result. It's about what you're doing right now without needing to know the end.
One way of looking at this is that there's two games going on. Meaning, well, if you play hard to win in hockey, you're not going to be invited back a second time. You'll win the first game. And you can win by cheating, you can win by being underhanded. You can win by just playing rough. You're playing within the rules, but you're breaking some bones. And you won. But no one's ever going to invite you back a second time. You're not going to be able to play the meta game of hockey over and over and over again. So there are things like that in life where they make sense, but you'd have to have a lot of life under your belt to be able to verbalize and make sense. Oh, okay, well, that's what it means. I think another more practical example, this one gets a little more hairy, is Hurricane Katrina that hit New Orleans. It was 1,200 people died. And, when it happened, the nation comes together and it's a horrible tragedy. It's a natural disaster. There was nothing natural about that disaster. Not one bit. It was something like 2/3 or more of the people that died in Hurricane Katrina wasn't because there was a hurricane. It was because the people that were designing the levees that were going to hold back the floodwaters decided to be cheap, and they knew it.
Titanic.
They knew they were being cheap. They knew that the levees would not hold with a level 5 hurricane. They knew people will die, and many people will die. And they also knew that it's about like every 100 years you have a level 5 hurricane near New Orleans.
Isn't a levee like a dam?
A levee is basically a big wall that when you have floodwaters, it holds them back.
Is it spelled
Like a dam?
Levee?
No, it's not. It might look a little bit like a dam, but it's a different thing. So, everybody relates to that experience as though that was a natural disaster and how horrible that was. Like I said, there's nothing natural about it. When they designed those levees, they knew that people were going to die. It's just you'd have to have a lifetime to know it because it's pretty rare. A level 5 hurricane only happens once every 100 years or something. So that's not knowledge you'd immediately know.
This is like wisdom.
Yeah. It's received wisdom which is true and very true. There is a logic to it. There is a rationalization behind it. It's just, like I said, you might not live long enough to figure it out that it is rational. For our purposes here, it's things like Shabbos is like that. Shabbos preserves the Jewish people. It doesn't really matter. One or two people don't keep Shabbos. The Jewish people will march on. But when enough Jews stop keeping Shabbos, well, those communities just disappear, and that takes a lifetime or two. Shabbos keeps the Jewish people. It's not the Jews that keep the Shabbos. It's the other way around. Kind of touching a little bit. I don't know. We're running out of time here. We're ending at 5, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're hitting 5 right now. Okay. So we'll leave it here. Just dipping our toes in the water, Bein L'Chavero. Any questions? Or
Can you just repeat the last line you just said? That it's rational, but like
We won't live long enough.
you just don't live long enough to realize it's rational. You'd have to live a lifetime or two to get, that makes sense. I see why that works that way.
Thank you for the class, Robin.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.